welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast. It's Tuesday, September 16th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We've got plenty to discuss today, starting with the Chiefs. They dropped to 0-2 after Sunday's 20-17 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles at Arrowhead. It was a Super Bowl rematch, and this one was more competitive than the Eagles' blowout victory in February, but a painful loss nevertheless. What is going on with this team that's 0-2 for the first time since 2014? We break it down and look forward to next week's game at the New York Giants with star columnist Sam McDowell and beat writer Pete Sweeney. After a break, we catch up with the Royals with beat writer Jaylon Thompson and columnist Vahe Gregorian, and I'll have some final thoughts at the end. Pete, how you doing?
I'm well. Yeah, you mentioned it. Partying like it's 2014, or not partying, I suppose.
Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Well, here we are. I don't know if anybody predicted 0-2. I thought it was possible coming out of the gate, given the schedule, and we thought the Chargers were a better team, and we knew the Eagles were the Eagles, and 0-2 seemed like a distinct possibility. Pete, why does it feel so downcast?
Well, I think we've seen over recent seasons that they have almost a magic to them, and it really doesn't matter what the problems are in front of them. They find a way to win the game or at least be competitive, win half of them. And we've seen them win so many close games last year. And I think if that hadn't been the case in recent seasons, you might look at, hey, we don't have the player we want to run our offense through for 6 games. We're probably not going to win all of these, but it just seems like they've always overcome. And I think you add Xavier Worthy into that mix, add in problems we're going to talk about and address, and just too tall a task when you're facing a Chargers team who last night, remember we're recording on Tuesday, so we saw the Monday night game. Defense looks like one of the better defenses in the league. Justin Herbert's playing at an MVP level, and then you run into the Super Bowl champions. It's too much. And so I think maybe 0-2 should have been more realistic in a lot of our minds than we let it to be.
Yeah, I just the record I don't think is a problem with the Chiefs. I think the way they're playing is what makes you more concerned about their future. I mean, the passing game is non-existent, and to have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback and Andy Reid as your play caller and not be able to move the ball through the air is a real concern. So I think you ask yourself, is this a talent issue or is this a scheme issue? And first of all, I think the answer is yes.
Right.
Like, you are missing Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, but as we're waiting on the 3 o'clock game, we follow the noon games, and I see Russell Wilson throw for 450 yards. That not nearly as much talent there. And I know they've got Malik Neighbors, but it's Russell Wilson. I see, the Patriots put up 33 points with a couple of receivers starting for him that probably most listeners of this podcast have not heard of. Like, there's ways to move the football with the players that the Chiefs have, but they're shrinking the field in a way by not throwing the ball downfield. And we talked about the downfield pass this offseason. They won't throw the intermediate pass anymore. They had one completion beyond 10 yards past the line of scrimmage until those final 4 minutes of that game. Like, no offense can operate that way. So I think the Chiefs really have to evaluate the way they're attempting to move the football. And it certainly doesn't help that, any secondary can feel free to throw numbers back there because the ground game is putting no fear into any opponent right now.
And yet I think Patrick Mahomes is playing pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 games, well, the fact that he's the leading rusher doesn't bode well for the Chiefs, but he is the leading rusher. He's kind of taken on, really on his shoulders, the responsibility of being a leader in a way that he really hasn't had to, when wins came more easily for the Chiefs. And when I say leads with his shoulder, he's literally leading with his shoulder.
Yeah.
In each of the last 2 games has tried to bowl over a defensive player to get his team fired up. So look, he had the long incompletion to Tyquan Thornton in the 4th quarter, which was a key play when you think about it, that they complete that pass and get in the end zone with 4 minutes to go. It's a touchdown game, and the Chiefs have an opportunity to maybe get a hold on defense and get the ball back down 1 score. He later completes a long pass to Thornton, but it was too late by then. But I think Mahomes is doing all he can to salvage this offense.
I think he looks like a quarterback who knows that he can't miss right now. And he missed on the first pass of the game, by the way, to Noah Gray, which is a perfect covered 2 beating route where they had 2 sort of sideline routes, and he threw to the deeper one with Noah Gray because he was open and he missed. But I agree with you, Blair. Like, he didn't miss much on Sunday, as much as he did maybe in the first half against the Chargers game. He took responsibility for the interception, the play to Travis Kelce. Kelce has to come up with that ball. Like, you're at a time, your roster's at a point where, like, you need everything out of Travis Kelce. I don't think you're getting it. And therefore, you're left with Mahomes playing with the playoff version of himself. We see him run like this in the playoffs because he believes that the game is so important. He's got to put everything on the line, and sometimes that means risking his body. He tries to conserve that more in the regular season. And to your point, Blair, he's at a point where he doesn't think he can. And so I think him running is not just like a bad sign for the running game, a bad sign for the passing game. It's him telling us that he does not think he can move the football very well unless he scrambles with his legs.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the run blocking, and you look at the running backs right now, they look without juice. And for one reason or another, I think that is really hurting the offense. I thought there was this idea in the preseason that Isaiah Pacheco was healthy and he'd be ready to go. I think part of the problem, you have conversations with Isaiah over the years. This is a rhythm running back that really gets in a rhythm, and then all of a sudden, you see him running downhill. They're splitting the carries seemingly right now between 2 average backs, if you want to even say average. And it does make you think back to, remember Brett Veach before the draft was like, we're definitely going to take a running back within the first 5 rounds, and they didn't do it. They went in other directions, and they ended up adding Brashard Smith in the 7th. But you really do feel like they're missing a game changer at running back. And not to say the run blocking has been great, but I think all of that has led to Mahomes feeling like, and we talked about it in the last podcast, but almost feeling like a NBA player, like a Steph Curry, LeBron James. I got to take every shot, because if I don't, no one else is hitting any. And so that's what you're getting. And to Mahomes' credit, he's had chances to win both of these games. But when you are so underhanded, I think the rest of the team has to play perfect games. And Sam mentioned Kelce. He catches that. Even despite everything, they might win this football game. They probably win the football game. But you're just not seeing perfect football from the rest of the team. And that's going to cost you against division contenders and Super Bowl contenders.
Just one real quick point on the lack of burst, just to underscore that. So Next Gen Stats will keep track of how often you reach 15 miles an hour in run and how often you reach 20 miles an hour in the run. I don't know if you saw Jonathan Taylor reach like 22.4 miles per hour, which for the Chiefs would seem like, being sprinted by Usain Bolt, or one of us being, matched up against Usain Bolt. But Patrick, the Chiefs have reached 15 miles per hour 16 times this year. Xavier Worthy did it once whenever he got the ball in the opening series. Patrick Mahomes has done it 12 times. Kareem Hunt's yet to reach 15 miles an hour. And in 15 carries, Pacheco's done it twice. And Pacheco's longest carry of the year is 10 yards, which Patrick Mahomes has done 7 times this year. And so Pete's right. There's no burst to the running game. And if you watch I think I went back and watched the film yesterday, and Pacheco on a couple of carries just takes a ball to where the rushing lane is not. And once he fails to follow Creed Humphrey, there seems to be a lack of patience there with Pacheco, to where it's just the first thing he sees rather than waiting for the play to develop. We saw the same thing in Brazil, where he fails to follow Josh Simmons to the outside. Here it was failing to follow Creed Humphrey on the inside. And in both cases, he turned what I thought could have been a pretty large gain into like a 1-yard gain.
Sam, you said 15 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Maybe Josh Simmons, a running back, stands for. He reached 18 miles an hour on his rundown of the interception.
That was an incredible moment, by the way. They got lost in the outcome of the game.
I know, that would have been a game changer that you looked at. But no, Blair, more seriously though, if you look at even the run block numbers from PFF, they're 28th. But to Sam's point, when they do have the opportunities that Sam dug into the film, they're just not gaining the yards they need to.
I think the running game thing is a big deal for the Chiefs right now, because the best offenses in the NFL have a good running game.
Yeah, it's changed over. You're right. It's changed over like just the last year or two to where this is, and I think your phrasing is really important. It's running game, not running back, typically in the NFL. But I think the Chiefs' lack of talent at running back is being exposed. Because what the other thing that stands out is Isaiah Pacheco has not run against a stacked box all year long. Like, these are generous run defenses that he's been facing, and he's still averaging 3.1 yards per carry. And like I said, when you watch it, I think there's got to be some frustration from their coaching staff to say, this play is there, and we still got 1 yard on it. And to me, that is where the running backs come into play. But how many times in the offseason did we question whether or not the Chiefs had good enough talent in the backfield? Like, this is a foreseeable thing. We can talk about the wide receivers and the fact that you're missing Rashee Rice for 6 games, the fact that Xavier Worthy gets injured on the first series of the first game, to where that's less foreseeable. Okay, you're going to try and get by without Rashee Rice for 6 weeks. This was the group you planned on having at running back. Mm-hmm. And this one is really their own blame here.
Last year, of course, because of the injury to Isaiah Pacheco in week 2 or 3, I forgot, the Falcons game, I forgot, or the Bengals game.
The Bengals game, week
2.
Yeah, late in week.
So they go to week 3 at Atlanta without replacing him, but then Kareem Hunt shows up in week 4.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility of the Chiefs acquiring a running back, and is there one out there, Pete, that could serve the need?
I mean, I think it's going to be tough to find a real game changer on the street. I, before camp, was looking at the Jacksonville room. Could they grab one of those guys? And eventually Jacksonville did trade Tank Bigsby to the Eagles.
Yes,
and
to the Eagles.
Bigsby was pretty,
with Saquon Barkley.
I thought he was pretty good last year. And I, much unlike Philadelphia, I think he could have vied for snaps against a Pacheco. I had looked, just at, some other rooms around the league, and, it's just tough because, now you're in week 2 and you're developing identities. And, at a certain point, you just wonder, what's going to be out there. Could Joe Mixon come back in Houston and suddenly he's healthy, and then you go with like a Dameon Pierce? I mean, is that really changing the game at this stage? Almost feels like that move had to come in the offseason, either through the draft or by trade preseason.
Is it unreasonable to think that with what the Chiefs are paying this offensive line, that they should be able to succeed with who they have on the roster?
Yeah, I think you could say that about offensive and defensive line. Like, right now, I think the offensive line's been better than a year ago, but what a low bar to clear. And when you look at the way that they're losing really in the trenches, you say, okay, you need to invest more in there, but you're like, wait a minute, this is where they have invested, and particularly this last offseason, you got the highest paid center, the highest paid right guard, a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and then Juwan Taylor, who's making $20 million. Those are your 5 guys. You look at the defensive line, you got the highest paid defensive tackle. You gave George Karlaftis a lot of money. You have drafted in the first round there a couple of years ago. It just didn't work out with Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Like, you've invested in the trenches, which is what Brett Veach tells us all the time. You're always going to start in the offensive and defensive line. I think you could, from a distant view, say, well, have you done that? Because you're not really producing there. Well, yes, they have. In which case, it's like you're not getting this. This roster is built in a manner to where your stars have to perform because of how much you're paying your stars, and their stars outside of Patrick Mahomes just aren't performing at a high level right now.
I totally agree with that the stars have to play better, and that has not been the case, except for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their highest paid players on the roster. After week 1, we were questioning whether Travis Kelce was running hard on a couple routes. In week 2, he drops a pass at the goal line. I think he spent more time on the sideline complaining than he did being the leader that we've known him to be. You look at Chris Jones, who has really not generated a ton of pressure. Now, the Eagles played a certain style that there weren't a ton of dropbacks in that game.
And had the big half against the Chargers.
Had like you said, I mean, the play where he knows he needs to take responsibility, where Drew Tranquill had already told him that on the field. So George Karlaftis has not really done much. And then, we just mentioned the offensive line, where you've also invested. Like I said, this roster's built really top heavy, and then everybody else in the top heavy is not carrying their load right now.
Yeah, the the press on the opposing quarterback has still got to be a concern. I did the defense looked better in this game from a coverage standpoint, especially against a really talented set of Eagles pass catchers. That being said, I think the defense could look even better if they were getting pressure with 4 or less, and you're just not seeing it at all, really, like on a consistent basis. And I think that's why the Eagles score was 20 instead of what could have been 14 or 13, and maybe you win one of those ugly Steeler type of games. And so they were able to do just enough. And then when you have the offense sputtering, especially at the beginning of games, it's just not going to be enough. And then you throw the wrinkle of the free play the free square that the Eagles have with the tush push. They ran it 7 times and were 5 of 7 in getting the yardage, including the end of the game. And that's going to be too much to handle when you're making so many mistakes and you're not getting consistently good play out of so many players.
Yeah, I think the clearest sign of their lack of pass rush is the fact that they've blitzed on 47%.
Is that what it ended up being?
47% in 2 games. Like, Steve Spagnuolo is telling you that he doesn't have any faith in this pass rush right now.
And the sack didn't come from a blitz.
Right.
It was a 4-man rush when Omar Norman Lott took down Jalen Hurts.
What was telling in this game, because I think it said something about both teams and especially the Chiefs in a way, you didn't see a ton of blitzing in the Super Bowl, and there was a lot of blitzing on both sides here. So, what does that say about Spagnuolo's confidence in the pressure with 4? Probably not great. What does that say with the Eagles' respect for the Chiefs' set of weapons? Also not great. So, take that for what you will. I just think that, it's crazy. This is a lot of the same players, but you've seen even the strategy, from game to game change drastically.
Chris Jones' pressure rate right now on Next Gen Stats is 7.0. Last year it was 12, and every year of his career it's been at least 11.8, including a couple of years where he's nearing 15%. He's at 7% right now.
Is it a matter of just getting double teamed, or what's going on with him?
Well, I think first of all, the thing we have to recognize is he is in his 30s now. It's why some of us questioned whether or not it was the right thing to give, a lineman $30-some million and pay him, $3 more million than anyone outside of Aaron Donald, was because players who age in their 30s, I mean, they show it. Now, we have seen Chris Jones, and, we've all been on the beat for a long time, to where it's a real thing that I feel like he's in better shape every year. Like, his body looks in unbelievable physical condition right now, even compared to a couple of years ago, which is when I really think he started taking this a lot more seriously. But yeah, I mean, he's been absent. He's been frustrated, and I still think that the Chiefs need to ask themselves if playing him at edge is, if they're really getting, what they want out of that.
I think a big reason that they did sign him to that deal, which was atypical for the Chiefs. I mean, I remember thinking about that contract, and I thought early on, eventually played out where they brought him back, but I thought early on they may go away because they've just shown that when a player gets into his late 20s, they don't really want to sign that player to a deal. And so I think that contract was atypical for them, and it was something that they did with the thought of, we'll have him for 2025 and we could accomplish this thing that no one's ever accomplished. And now, much like maybe the Royals trading for players, prospects for players, and they're not making the postseason, sort of a weird parallel there, but it's like now you have to deal with the repercussions of maybe signing a player that's not going to reach that production of the money value. And I think that could be what you're seeing right now.
But he did jaw with Jalen Hurts after the game.
Yeah. I think he lost that argument.
He mentioned some stats. He did. He said, we don't even have 100 yards, I think he said. And Jalen Hurts politely said, shut your you-know-what up. And he was right, honestly. I hate to say it, but Hurts was right in that argument.
Well, Hurts tends to get his yards one at a time, rushing. And Pete, you wrote about that in the aftermath. Have we seen maybe the beginning of the end, or the beginning of the alteration in the rule book of the tush push?
I think the Packers' energy last offseason was saying we need to get rid of this because of safety. And that really didn't prove to be true with testing. And even Jason Kelce, the king of the tush push, came in and defended it in front of owners. And what it led to was only 22 owners voting to ban it instead of 24, What changed yesterday, and this is significant because Kansas City fans can relate to this with Chris Collinsworth and Juwan Taylor. You might remember that Chris Collinsworth sort of called out Juwan Taylor, and he's been the target of officials ever since. What happened in the game on Sunday is Tom Brady was the first to mention, okay, they missed a blown call, a false start on the tush push. Later in the game, when the Eagles finally had the game sealing tush push, it seemed that Drew Tranquill may have come up with the ball, but they had blown it dead. And Dean Blandino, the referee rules analyst for Fox, essentially said, we can't officiate or see this. And so now you're seeing, I think, a different take on it, less about safety, more about we can't even officiate this play fairly. And Chris Jones said they were moving. Andy Reid, who barely says anything, this was about a 10 on the scale of how much he'll talk about officials. He said something. And so I wonder how referees adjust. If they adjusted, fans have a point about this. If they're adjusting for Taylor, they should adjust the next week for the Eagles. We'll see how effective it is if there's an adjustment. And then later, maybe in March, you see that momentum to eventually get 2 more owners, that they call it the super majority, 24 of 32, to get it out of the game. I don't think it's an entertaining play. I had been in the past saying it's not fair to be banned just because they're good at it. But now I think you're starting to see legitimate reasons to take it out of the game.
It can't be offside. I mean, you can't or false start on it. And both guards were.
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy this. It's impossible to officiate argument because we all spotted it from the press box on the last one, the one that really generated the ire of Andy Reid, where he was on the field during a timeout trying to wave the white hat over to him, which he didn't want to meet. But we all commented, wow, they moved early on it, and we are a long view away.
It's high. Yeah.
We got the all 44, not the 22 I was saying there. And so I agree it cannot be the easiest play to officiate, but they made it look a lot more difficult than I think it is.
All right, guys, great conversation as always. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to catch up with Royals beat writer Jaylon Thompson and columnist Vahe Gregorian. The Royals are trending in the wrong direction after losing 6 of their last 8. They're not mathematically eliminated from the playoff race, but at 6.5 games back for the final wildcard spot and 12 games remaining, starting with tonight's homestand against the Seattle Mariners, a team they're chasing, by the way, they are running out of time. Here to discuss the Royals is beat writer Jaylon Thompson. Hello, Jaylon.
Hey, Blair. How you doing?
Good, good. And star columnist Vahe Gregorian. What's up, Vahe?
Hey, Blair. Great to be with you guys.
Yeah, Jaylon, as we were saying, it's Royals have find themselves in a tough spot. What did I get the numbers right? 6.5 out with 12 games remaining?
That's right. You're absolutely right.
And it's not like it's cream puffs here. They got the Mariners and the Toronto Blue Jays right after that, both at Kauffman Stadium. But if the season ended today, the Royals would be playing the top. Am I right about this? The top seed in the American League and the Blue Jays, and the number 3, the Mariners. So it's a little bit of a tough week for them.
It is, and everyone in the clubhouse understands what's ahead of them. They did not have the road trip that they wanted to have this last week, dropping 2 games that they should have won in Cleveland was really disappointing, and then getting beat by the Philadelphia Phillies 2 out of 3 as well. Bobby Witt Jr., Royal superstar, said it best. The time is now. They can't lose anymore, pretty much. And if they're going to make a magical Mission Impossible Tom Cruise style run at this, they have to win at least 5 out of 6 this week just to put themselves in contention. And to be honest with you guys, I don't even think that's going to be enough. It's just time is not on their side. But if any team can do it, it could be the Royals. They are a team that's resilient. They just don't quit. You think you have a pin down and somehow they wiggle out of it and they stay in the fight. They've done that all season. So I would not be shocked if somehow, some way, they made this thing closer than they probably should have.
Well, and they're 75 and 75, right? They're a 500 team right now. And Vahe, you've been in Kansas City long enough, and I've been in Kansas City long enough to think that getting to this record this late in the season, is a reason for joy, right? And to be in a play and not be eliminated from the playoff chase in September is a good thing. But it got me thinking recently that the Royals were in the playoffs last year, finally ended the decade-long playoff drought by making it last year. And this year, it looks like they're going to fall short. Maybe if we had reversed the seasons and they had come close last year and got in the playoffs this year, we would be thinking about things differently. But I think we got a little greedy after last season and thought, why not do it again?
And I think one of the things that hits exactly at the point you're making is the Royals want to have some traction and momentum about having built something. And, just another winning season would be a little bit in that direction, but it's very unsatisfying if they're going to fall short. Hey, by the way, just something I got thinking about, Blair, was in our lifetimes, but not in probably our consciousness, but I can't think of what the modern approximation of getting to a postseason this far down would be beyond the one that sticks out to me about the 64 Cardinals and the Phillies collapse. I think the Phillies were 8 games up with 9 to play or something. It was just unbelievable. And I don't know if it quite takes that. I don't know what the most recent similar thing would be, but
This is pretty Houdini-esque if they can manage this.
I remember, I think it was 2007 where I want to say it was 07, where the Colorado Rockies won something like 16 of their last 17 games to get into the playoffs. I can't remember how far back they were. And one of the Astros teams, not the American League Astros teams, but National League Astros teams, had an incredible second half. Just played out of their minds to get into the playoffs. I'll have to look that up, but yeah, it would be next to impossible. Jaylon, you put it best, mission impossible if the Royals were to pull this one off.
Yeah, and I think with the way the Royals are playing right now, the only thing that they should really concern themselves about is looking forward to 2026 and being grateful that the front office really has given them a leg up. And I think that's what a lot of people aren't really looking at right now. They have starting pitching. They have more than enough starting pitching to compete next season. So now you are at a point where you can use some of that starting pitching depth and go get offense. And I think the number one thing that they are going to need next year is that outfield bat or a impact bat that can really change the game for them. And they have the resources to go and get that. With Carter Jensen and Jack Caglione coming up this season, you expect them to be somewhat in the lineup next year, opening day, right? So now you really, your off-season goal is just to get better offense. And I think that's, even if they don't make the playoffs this year, that's a good thing that this season has brought out, is the fact that the starting pitching is there. The bullpen is there. The offense is the main goal.
So starting pitching hasn't been around much this year because of injury, but for this final 2-week stretch, it is back. Michael Wacha, who just missed one start because of the concussion, he's starting tonight. Cole Reagans, who's missed the last 3 months because of the rotator cuff strain, he's supposed to start on Wednesday and could see Seth Lugo on Thursday. So, the season, especially the second half of the season, which has been marked by fill-ins in the starting rotation. We'll get some of these guys back this week. It'll be great to see especially Reagans and who's missed so much time for the Royals this season. But I wanted to kind of wind this down on a positive note, and that's the play of Salvador Perez, especially the hitting of Salvador Perez here in the last, actually since the All-Star break. He's had 15 home runs since the All-Star break. He's on quite a tear. He's up to 28 home runs, 89 RBIs going to this last stretch of the season, which means he has surpassed career numbers, 300 home runs and 1,000 RBIs. Just an amazing run for him. Jaylon, what have you seen from Salvy here the last few weeks, and especially that series in Philadelphia?
I think you saw the essence of why Salvador Perez is the captain of the Kansas City Royals. and he is a living legend in this city. For him to do and reach 300 home runs is far impressive than what anyone can really comprehend right now because of the fact of what he did in his journey to get to where he's at. Vahe has covered and wrote great stories on Salvy all throughout his career. But just going back to just him being a often overlooked prospect, coming through the system, learning all the way up through and becoming the guy that he is today, that 300 home run mark, he'll never say it because he's focused on winning but it was so important to not only him, but to everyone in the organization for what he means to the game of baseball. We talked about it all the time. I think that was the final marker for him to make the Hall of Fame. I thought he was going to be a Hall of Famer even before if he never got 300 home runs, but I think he will get into the Hall of Fame now. I think it's solidified. There's nothing to kind of impede him anymore. That was the final obstacle. And I think that next year, you could conceivably see him break George Brett's record for most home runs in Royals history and also probably walk into the top 5 of the most home runs by MLB catcher all time.
What do you think, Vahe? You are a Hall of Fame voter. We've got to wait for the final chapters to be written for any player, really. But there's no doubt Salvador Perez is going to be remembered as one of the all-time great Royals. And just to, before you weigh in, Vahe, there's 8 catchers with 300 career home runs, and the list is Mike Piazza, Johnny Bench, Carlton Fisk, Yogi Berra, Gary Carter, Pudge Rodriguez, and it primarily is catchers. And all of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. Those 7. There's one, Lance Parrish, who isn't, but Salvy's certainly building Hall of Fame numbers and stands, I think, a pretty good chance of being the second Royals player who played his career, primarily with the Royals, to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. But there's still miles left on the tire, right, on the tread. The Royals are going to have to decide to pick up his $13.5 million option for next year. I think that's a no-brainer. What do you think, Vahe?
I do think it's a no-brainer. And I think, to the Hall of Fame credentials matter. I think 2 or 3 years ago, we would have been thinking pretty iffy, and there's no way he's going to have these kind of numbers the next couple of years, right? He's getting old. And, as you put it, the tread on the tire, you had to feel like it was starting to at least wither, if not start, crumbling off. And no, it's really not been like that. Now, there have been some droughts this year that made you wonder, like, how much there is left. But if you look at the whole all-encompassing picture with him, I think the Royals will welcome him back. I don't know anything more beyond that I haven't thought too much yet about how much more they might want to look at it beyond that, but it's hard to believe they wouldn't want that season. And I think I wouldn't call it gravy, but I do think the case has been established. I think now it's maybe, how much more he can sort of feather it. But Blair, probably the biggest point of all that you just made is something that it's still hard to believe that he would only be the second player in franchise history that have spent his whole career with the Royals to become a Hall of Famer. That's really a significant thing for Kansas City to track.
Yeah, we'll spend more time talking about it, especially as the season after the season. There are a couple of guys, right? Carlos Beltran and Zach Greinke, who spent more years in a Kansas City uniform than any other uniform that they wore. I think those are 2 Hall of Fame bound players. But Salvador Perez, unless we're wildly mistaken here, and I don't think we are, will spend his entire career in a Royals uniform. And whether that's, 15 years, 16 years, whatever that ends up being, and whatever the career numbers end up being, I think he will end up being the Royals' second full-time, Royal Hall of Famer. We'll have to see. So, all right. Go ahead, Jaylon.
I was listening to the great Josh Vernier, nice inspired fan, who is a Royals insider. He does all the pre and post game shows. He said something that really stood out to me on one of his shows. He said, "We're living in a time where both Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez are playing at the same time. If you extrapolate it out through the next 20 years, you might be seeing two of the greatest worlds to ever play in this uniform together at the same time.
Yeah, two guys who could have their uniform number retired. And wherever the Royals are playing, stadium-wise, we could see their numbers on the scoreboard just retired from the organization. So, all right, Jaylon, Vahe, thank you very much for the conversation. And when we come back, I'll have some final thoughts. We're back on SportsBeat KC, and here's what's on my radar for the week. On Saturday, Missouri will entertain South Carolina in the Tigers' first SEC game this season, and Mizzou is on a roll. They're 3-0 and coming off a 52-10 demolition of Louisiana, a game in which running back Ahmad Hardy rushed for 250 yards. That was the most by any major college running back in the nation last weekend. Before the season, I pointed to this game as a pivotal moment for Missouri, but that's changed a little bit. I still think it's a big one, but South Carolina's crushing home loss to Vanderbilt last weekend has taken a little luster off of this one. Still, a big game for Missouri. Kickoff is 6 p.m., and it'll be on ESPN. And how about this event coming to Kansas City? Last weekend, Fox Sports brought its pregame show to the Power and Light District for the Chiefs-Eagles game, and now another sports show is moving in. The Premier League Mornings Live Fan Festival is setting up shop at Kansas City Live in the P&L on Saturday and Sunday. It's a free deal. All 10 Premier League matches will be broadcast live this weekend. There'll be special guest appearances by Premier League legends, mascots, fan interactions, and the NBC Sports Studio team will broadcast live. It just so happens that Sporting KC and the Kansas City Current have home matches on Saturday, with Sporting taking on Vancouver at 7:30 and the Currents game against Seattle set to start at 6:30. Kansas City will certainly feel like the soccer capital of the world this weekend, with the World Cup games coming to KC in less than a year. Well, that'll do it for this week's show. Thanks to our producers Randy Mason, Monty Davis, and Suzanne Hogan, and to our editors Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. We'll be back next week on SportsBeat KC, talking sports in Kansas City.